myself, Nishad, and Raj are in Group 6, Comparative Ecology. Just before I start the presentation, I think I need to sort of say we have two Group 6s. Three of our members are not here. So they are probably going to present at some other point for something else. But anyways, I'll talk about Group 6.1's Comparative Ecology project.
It's called 6 Alpha.
Right, 6 Alpha. Actually, I prefer beta, but beta alpha. So, at least for us, we were having, we were struggling to actually understand what comparative ecology was. A few of us don't even come from science backgrounds, so understanding what ecology meant was a pretty difficult feat. But we managed, and we did some research, and really sort of like the premise of our project was to look at, okay, what particular part of ecology would we like to focus on? Globally, or not globally, but in general, there are 6 types of ecology that can be identified. I'm just going to point you to it. So you've got the ecology of organisms, which could be plants, animals, humans, any living thing. And you've got the ecology of ecosystems, ecologies of population, community ecologies. They fall into one branch where you're looking at comparing or looking at particular sets of organisms and systems together. And then you've got the harder branch of ecology, as I like to think of it, where you're looking at landscapes and global ecology, where you're looking at the entire system and how it sort of grows and progresses over time. So basically, in order to sort of identify what we were actually trying to measure, we identified that in order to do any sort of data analysis for comparative ecology, we'd have to either look at the evolution of a particular species or a particular entity that we were studying, right, with respect to a variety of factors. So life history strategies or patterns of distribution and abundance. So these were the two main streams of thought that we identified as we'd be able to sort of obtain data for, as well as analyze it based on that. So and really, for us, it was sort of like the whole field was driven by the search for data and subsequent analysis. So our sort of like I don't have too many results to present, but I am going to talk about how what our approach was focused on and how we came to where we came to, because really nothing was finalized until a few days ago. We kept going back and forth amongst different types of questions that we had. So for example, one of our group members wanted to maybe test an hypothesis as to how come polar bears can't be found in the Western Ghats? Why are they only restricted to Arctic regions? I mean, how does life permit them only to be able to live in certain habitats? So that was a hypothesis. We wanted to sort of go on the hypothesis basis. We then sort of moved on to another member of ours is working on a project in Kashmir as to how many actual mass graves exist in Kashmir. And how does that contradict with what the reported number of mass graves are by the Indian government, right? And one of the techniques we were thinking of using was looking at the growth patterns of certain plant species. So for example, in areas where there are lots of mass graves, the number of plant species or the leaf length, for example, of those species would vary, or based on area, depending on area. So that was one way of gauging. We looked at, we looked at sort of like sparrows. We keep hearing about how sparrows have disappeared from Bangalore, and this was something that is there a relationship between the distribution of house sparrows to roof types? So, for example, are there any correlations that can be made between what types of house roofs sustain sparrow populations better? And then for example, the other group 6, they wanted to look at urban growth. So, for example, they were doing a study on startup communities and how startup communities grow in places like Bangalore versus Hyderabad versus Jodhpur and so forth. So, we looked at Rajesh's problem description, and we literally did a question to problem mapping. So we looked at the distribution of entities, right? Either species, companies, cities. We looked at, we wanted to measure our analysis on 2 different axes, so to speak. So one on diversity and the other on population, right? So we came up with house sparrows with roof types in houses located in India, primarily because it does provide a very manageable analytic approach versus looking at the urban population of Bangalore and how it's changed with respect to time. I think and for a class like this we need a lot longer to be able to produce some tangible results. And the data for sparrow populations is relatively easier to find due to the abundance of citizen science projects that have actually taken place. So we definitely wanted to derive our results from the most accurate data that we could find, with a little bit of extrapolation and so forth. So our approach to the problem at hand was to use 2 different techniques: cross correlation, right, by cross correlating the number of house sparrows as the dependent variable, and number of houses with different types of roofs, concrete roofs as tile roofs as the independent variable. One thing I did not sort of put in the presentation is there are about 16 different types of roofs as identified in Indian habitats or in Indian housing. So everything from like your mud roofs to your grass roofs to your hay roofs to combination of roofs. We generally found that the most interesting measures due to the abundance of data were concrete roofs and tile roofs, just because the majority of Indian houses have concrete roofs and tile roofs where the sparrow populations are measured. And then we wanted to also use the technique of relative distribution. So we want to compare the relative distribution of house sparrows for different parts of the country and look for any sort of abundance or scarcity patterns. So is there a particular reason why there are less sparrows in Bangalore versus more sparrows in Chennai? Based on city size and so forth. So requirements and availability. Our requirements were to find number of sparrows in different parts of India. That was a key requirement. And what are the different roof types of Indian houses, for which we'd have the data to calculate sparrow numbers. The availability, actually, we identified a citizen science project, citizensparrow.in, and basically the reason we sort of narrowed down on this was because it's got the most recent data from April and May of this year. So the analysis that we would progress to do would be as recent as possible. And the large number of locations were identified, 8,371 locations in India, and largely clustered around urban centers. So our analysis will focus more on urban populations of house sparrows versus urban and rural. Our plan for data extraction, we identified HTML pages, so basically websites where we're planning to scrape the data from. So we thought, okay, either we could sort of request the people behind the initiative to provide the data, go to the organizers or the founders of Citizen Sparrow and just tell them to give us the answer. Or we should do what I think the class wants us to do, where we actually manually scrape the data, not manually, sorry, automated scrape the data, and create databases out of it and analysis out of it. So our proposed data extraction techniques would, we did a little bit of preliminary analysis since each sparrow observation from the citizen science website have a separate URL. So for example, it's in this format, right? And each sparrow observation had its own ID number. So for example, sample ID number would be 10719, and the ID itself is associated with the observation ID. So the HTML page contains, I don't have it with me because I didn't have time to put it on, but we've got a huge data structure. So we've got about 25 different ways to measure sparrow observations, or give parameters on sparrow observation. Everything from locality and rough address to city and district, and lat long coordinates, time period, and so forth, and whether the presence of sparrow nests were there or not, and as well as looking at mobile phone coverage to see if there are any correlations we can be made from that. So having all this, having 25 rows of information definitely gives us a lot more to explore versus I saw 3 sparrows in Bangalore at MG Road at 3 o'clock. So that's that. Row ID relates to the name of the URL. So that's one technique that we're using to scrape the data. And we are sort of focusing on deriving the number of sparrows in a particular location. So, and we've noticed that the grouping is in arbitrary classes. So for example, the sections that you can choose from is either 1 to 5 sparrows. They're all given as approximates, 5 to 10 sparrows, to be as reasonable as possible. Because to handle error. So roof types is going to be captured using the 2011 census data, and we currently got data for about 15 different states. Karnataka is not one of them. So we're probably going to go with what we have for the census. And the census data, it's available in PDFs with the variety of different fields. So for example, I was talking about the roof types, looking at grass, thatch, bamboo, wood, polythene, so forth, and tiles and concrete roofs were the most sort of like the largest number of the data for concrete and tile roofs were available. So so primarily look at the number of tile and concrete roofs, and data is proportionate. Data would be proportionate to the total number of households in the locality. Yeah, so don't have any results to show for today, but as we are sort of like we've got the train rolling, so the analysis is going to come, and we'll have results to show. That's it.
Why do you think it's roofs that matter? I mean, of all the various variables, why are roofs type?
Well, we've got our scientists on hand.
Perception that changing in the roof pattern from tiling the roof process to concrete, they are losing the habitat for making their nest. So if the roof, tiled roof is reducing, the habitat is reducing and the population is reducing. That's in the common observation.
But there could be other correlative factors as well.
You said it's because you think that sparrows nest in roofs more than...
Yeah, it has more facility or more room to nest in.
What about markets? The availability of markets and grain is also thought to be something that drives sparrows, right?
Yeah.
So, just roofs. I mean, if you give them a cardboard box, they'll nest there. So, is it roofs or is it?
For narrow down the single variable availability.
I think roof data is available versus like, for example, alternative habitat data is not. So we're sort of trying to go on, whatever data we can find, we will, ultimately the analysis will have to depend on available data sources. Just because we can't go and collect the
You
data.
don't want the Birbal story, right? Where when you look only where the light can shine. So.
No, definitely. In order to sort of, I don't think we have the time or the resources to go and commission an independent study. It's already been, some studies have already been done, and especially for ecology, where data collection techniques are almost from, difficult to nearly impossible, based on a variety of factors. That was sort of the challenging aspect of our project. And roof types was sort of, we decided on roof types just because, it's available via the census data. And we've got, a lot of data to work with, where we can actually try and find some interesting patterns. The point was not to sort of find the easiest problem, but to sort of find as much, abundant data as possible to see if there are any interesting patterns and really apply whatever the gamut of data analysis techniques to see if there are any, new trends. With limited data sets, we can't really apply too many analysis techniques.
But is roof type itself reflective of something else? I mean, is that something you want to take into account? Because if it's reflecting economic status or size of the city or some other development parameter, then maybe that's what's driving sparrows. So do you want to say that this is a surrogate for something else and that you think that...
it can be at least just in, say that it's a change or at least a pattern is happening. That's at least.
Yeah, and I mean, we're open to looking at different sources too. This is just preliminary, presentation one. So by the time we give our second presentation, we might have, identified potentially.
Here's why I think you should strengthen your study. I mean, partly because you don't know if roof type is a causal variable or just a correlate of something else, right? That's the most important thing. The second is that even if it is causal, it may be one of many other causes, right? And so, for example, let's take pigeons, which are also urban birds. You may want to see if pigeon populations are also declining with or whatever with the roof type change, because they also nest in similar situations. So if you're finding that pigeons and sparrows are doing differently, you would have to rethink some of your hypotheses. So I'm just saying that you need to play with some alternative explanations as well, not just this one.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, it can give an arena for narrow down the question. If it's something is pattern is visible, okay, we will go for other factors like economic.
The survey data from Citizen Sparrow.net seems interesting in itself, outside of any possibility we try to test on why sparrows are doing things like, for instance, what can you find out about the people that are responding?
Yeah.
About these
It's
surveys?
mostly urban centers that give you data.
Yes, exactly.
So is there a difference in population density versus voting density?
And education awareness is the initiative was a timed initiative that was circulated by certain media. So only people with access to those media and who are aware of it at that particular period of time contributed. So quite biased sample.
So what would flip the study around a bit and say, what can this tell us about responding to the survey rather than what it
It's a
is?
study of citizen scientists rather than us.
Very interesting topic. And also I noticed that a large number of them have shared. So there is one question which says, would you like to share a story about how sparrows are this time period? A random check of about 10 respondents, and all 10 have a story. So there's some interesting things to be in mind about it. So what do they say in these stories? A couple of them have talked about the time of the roof. So maybe there's something also there. But I think that data is enough. Even if it doesn't tell enough about sparrows, it may tell us.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
So you planning to do this analysis city-wise or state-wise or?
Whatever this roof type data is available.
Yeah. Like census data is only available for particular states, out of which Karnataka is not included. So I think we're sort of going to focus maybe on whatever is complete and see if certain urban centers based on size and density show similar results or different results.
So if you're getting data for Karnataka for roof types and you're getting data for sparrows, 90% of your data is from Bangalore. Correlating with them might not mean anything, right?
Yeah. So then what we'll do is we'll narrow down to the cities.
So can you do that with the data set from the census? Can you just get the data for Bangalore roofs instead of using Karnataka?
There is no Karnataka roof type data is
You mean Bangalore?
No, Karnataka.
No, but
Just
even
pick
if you
an
do it
other
for
state.
some other state, let's say you do
Yeah,
it for Chennai.
But your data for sparrows is not state-wise.
Right.
And cities and villages very drastically, even in sparrows, not just in roof types. So if you want to average roof types across the state, and you're getting your sparrow data from cities, which are very ecologically different, areas, can you say that there are no sparrows in Bangalore because Karnataka has 90% tile roofs, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess we'll have to sort of think about it and look at whether it is a causal variable or a, correlation variable, what you suggested. So there's still a lot of sort of, we've got to sort of test the problem statement itself.
After getting into analysis,
What are some of the other causal variables that have come up in the observation of sparrows that we discussed?
like this
Apart from roofs.
market types. Earlier it was like people are used to cunning bags to take the grains and that. So they left out will be available in the market. Now it's plastic bags, it's very less seepage of this.
So availability of grain.
Yeah.
seems to be less.
So they are not getting the cereal level.
For instance, noise and decibel levels are not a possible.
So there are people that say that
Because in
Mobile
cities, that
phones.
is one of the things.
Mobile phone coverage is another variable. For example, when was, mobile phone coverage sort of introduced to those areas?
But
now
why
the
would that
population-
affect sparrows more than any other bird?
There's supposedly some link to
They
sparrows.
human
Like what?
Yeah, like, I don't know, he's a scientist. I just read it somewhere.
they are more related to the human dominant than other.
It really messes them up more than the other birds.
There are
Alright.
no studies that say that at all. There are no studies that say sparrows are more affected by other birds than because of the phenomena.
It's in a hypothesis like people are doing.
Or, I mean,
I think you guys need to do a little bit more sort of targeted research. I mean, just because you don't want to find random correlations just for the sake of finding correlations.
no, definitely.
Actually, it's in a common